God is our refuge and strength.
God is our refuge and strength, our ever-present help in distress. Though the earth trembles and the mountains slide into the sea, we have no fear.
Though the waters of the sea rage and foam,
and mountains shake at their surging, the God of hosts is with us, our stronghold, the God of the faithful people. There is a river whose streams give joy to the city of God,
which the Most High has made a holy dwelling. God is within her. She cannot be shaken. God will help her at the break of day.
Even if nations are in chaos and kingdoms fall, God's voice resounds, the earth melts away. God is with us. The God of the faithful people is our stronghold.
Come and see what the Lord has done.
Come, see the deeds of the Most High, the marvelous things God has done on earth. All over the world, God has stopped wars, breaking bows, splintering spears, burning the shields with fire. Be still and know that I am God.
Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God.
Well, hello, and thank you for joining us for this episode of CASA. We are at CASA episode 7. So can you believe it? This is the 7th episode. We made it to episode 7. So you're probably still in your house as we are in ours. So welcome. Welcome to our house, and thank you for watching CASA today. We have a very special guest with us. His name is Nathanael Welch, and he's our friend from here in Youngstown. He is a musician, he is also a theologian, and he has a lot of great wisdom to share with us today. We're talking about taking things a little bit slower and taking time to breathe and really being present today. So I hope that you enjoy this interview with him and this episode of CASA. So thank you for being with us.
So I originally met Nathanael Welch. Is it Welch, or am I saying that incorrectly?
Yeah, it's Welch, like the grape juice.
Okay. So I originally met Nathanael Welch through a collaborative event that both Nathanael, myself, the Sacred Commons, and St. John's Episcopal Church kind of did together to bring Dr. Tripp Fuller to Youngstown. I quickly discovered that you are a thoughtful, mindful, very present person. Academically, Nathan has received his master's degree in both theology and music, but he's also the kind of person that wouldn't want me to really go into that. So that just speaks to your humility too, but I think that's important that people know. And with your philosophy, the way you view the world, your theology, you correct me if I'm wrong on this, Nathan, but I would describe you as a person who draws from the beauty of both the Western world, but almost primarily the Eastern world. And you dance with the church. We said in our prior conversation that you like to live on the fringes of Christian thought, and I love that. I like that you live in those concentric places where the anomalies exist, and where they overlap, where Christian ideas overlap with Eastern ideas and so on and so forth. And in fact, one of the things that I really cherish is your thesis that you wrote your dissertation on, The Kingdom of the Little Ones. Did I say that correctly for the title? Something like that. And it dealt with disability in the church and Matthew's gospel and Taoism. I have never read anything like that before in my life, and it was incredible. And I'll say it again, I think the whole world needs to read your dissertation. It's amazing.
I'm happy to give it out. It's one of those things that you spend all this time working on, and like a small, maybe 5 people total read it, and then nothing ever happens. It just sits on a shelf or in a hard drive somewhere, and that's it. So, anytime I find somebody who's remotely interested in reading, I'm like, let me send it to you.
You guys need to check this out. It's good. It's really good. So, this is Nathanael Welch. Thank you for being on CASA today. I want to begin with this first question. Can you give us a brief background about yourself, your story, your life, and how that has formed you in a certain way, the way you look at the world?
So I'm from this area, Youngstown area, born and raised. I'm the oldest, and my next oldest sibling, 2 years younger than me, is severely disabled. So he's autistic, he has epilepsy, developmentally disabled, and he is cerebral palsy. And so like the amount of care that he needed from the beginning, was significant. And watching my mom take care of him, and then also being part of that, once I reached a certain age and was able to participate in it, really changed the way that, I'd say it changed the way I looked at the world, but I don't know any other way to look at it, I suppose, is the right way to say it. And in fact, interesting side note, a lot of people with disabilities will feel the same way too. Like a lot of people tend to think that they must be lacking something in their life. But if they were born with their disability, then they don't know any other way. So it's not like they have anything to compare it to. It's just like how they are, and it's how the world is. And it's similar to me. I mean, I don't myself have a disability, but watching my brother grow up, people interacting with him, the way that people responded to him, both positive and negative, and then actually helping to take care of him, first just as a sibling, and then later in life and currently like as his primary caregiver, that was the norm. And everything else that I have experienced, whether it's relationally with other people, or academically, or politically, anything like that is colored by that experience. And I see it through that experience primarily, first. Not a lot of people think about those experiences or those people with disabilities. So it's always sort of pushed me, like you said, to the fringes. Because even though I don't have a disability myself, I deeply care about my brother who is, and those ideas, the only place he sort of is welcome, I guess, if you will, is sort of on the fringes. And so I just sort of naturally inhabited that space, I suppose, and was never satisfied. That was the other thing, I think, is I just was never satisfied with any of the answers I got. So I just kept looking, and I kept learning, and I kept exploring and gathering new experiences, and trying to find something to help me make sense of these experiences. And that's sort of why it's sort of an eclectic mix of different influences. Is just because I draw on a lot of different traditions, because these experiences aren't something that any one tradition like really tackles. So you sort of have to find all these disparate pieces and kind of weave together some sort of weird tapestry. So that's briefly, my sort of background and why I'm interested in these sorts of topics.
I think that's one of the reasons why I really like you, is because the fringes called to me in a certain way. I remember one time when we were setting up during that first promo thing that we did for that event, you said something real quickly to me when you found out that I had a Pentecostal background, and you said something about, do you know anything about Amos Young? And I was like, yeah, what do you know? Like that, because his work on the church and disability is so fringe. It's not the normative. Like, you don't see the church talking about that sort of thing too much. And just knowing that there was another person thinking about that, it made me admire you immediately. Like, the admiration I had for you was instant from that moment on. I was like, whatever this dude is into, whoever he is, I want to get to know him better. Going in line with that thought, one of the things that you always talk about is how so frequently we feel the need, especially as like Westerners, we feel the need to do something. We are very action-based. We don't take time to pause. We don't take time to be still. We don't take time to rest. Even in this pandemic, I've seen things online like people saying, now's the time to get your to-do list done.
Right. Yeah,
It's
like there's so much pressure to take all this, free time to accomplish something. Write that novel you've always been, start your new workout regimen or something. Yeah.
We have a culture that incentivizes coercive action. We have a culture that celebrates nonstop doing, and it actually devalues, I was thinking about this, it actually devalues stillness. It calls it lazy. You have this different perspective because of your life and how the baseline for your life was framed in such a way that there's much that you cannot do anything about, which kind of led you to this idea that we see in Eastern thought of doing nothing and how that actually is a virtue. Can you talk about this? So what would you say, and you go as far as you want to with this one, what would you say are some of the myths within not only progressive Christianity, but also progressive ideology in general?
Sure. Drawing from my experience and just talking a little bit briefly about that to set this up, I think. My brother is, as I mentioned, severely disabled, and there is nothing we can do about it. There's no cure for his conditions. There are some medications that he's on to help with the seizures, but honestly, they don't always help, and he still has seizures. He's still autistic. He still has cerebral palsy. He has difficulty moving and walking. He's nonverbal. He needs help going to the bathroom and bathing and getting dressed and eating and everything. I have a 6-month-old son, and they're very similar in their abilities. And it's frustrating for me because I am, despite what I say, just as bad as all those people you talk about, because I am just as much of a like do control. I need to do something. I am really not good at just sitting still and resting and taking a break. I'm not good at that. And the way that manifests itself when I take care of my brother is that I get very frustrated when he can't do something and I can't do anything to help. It's just really hard sometimes. And I feel so bad because I'm getting frustrated with him because he can't do anything. And it's like, I just want to help. What am I so anxious about? Is because I just want to do it for him. I just want to like move. But I can't do anything about it. And I mean, the earliest experience I had with this was probably in middle school. I remember I wanted to cure him. I wanted to fix him so bad. I just wanted, because I didn't want him to suffer. And I wanted him to have a life like I had. I was young and naive, and now I don't feel that way. But that comes from a place of a belief that we can control the world around us, absolutely, and that we should do that. It's when I can allow myself to stop trying so much, which doesn't mean that I'm not taking care of him. I'm not feeding him and changing him and doing all those things. I'm still doing those things, but it feels so different when I'm doing it because I feel like I need to control him, his environment, his world, do something to help him versus just experiencing him, reacting, responding to him, encountering him sort of authentically. We want to fix everything, solve all the problems, but we forget, and I think this current situation with the global pandemic, I think really brings to the fore how little control we actually have. You can shut down, okay, we're going to stop immigration, we're going to shut down the borders, we're going to cease all travel, and it still came. It's still spread. Like we can't stop it.
Yeah.
We can't stop it. Yes, there are things we should do. Wash your hands, absolutely. Wear a mask when you're in public, but we can't, like, that is not the same thing as thinking and acting and believing that we have the ability to control the world, I guess.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh, it totally does. And that's what kind of led you to Eastern philosophy, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And you shared this poem with me. It's this Japanese poem, and you're gonna have to unpack it more because I'm probably gonna mess it up, but it's something along the lines of sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes to us. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think the translation I'm most familiar with says, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself.
Oh, I love that.
There's a notion in Taoism which is called Wu Wei, which sort of, it's hard to translate, but you could translate it a couple ways, maybe like doing, not doing. I've seen some people translate it as non-coercive action. So all of those sorts of things are implied and more in that term. And I think that poem sort of captures the essence of it beautifully. And I think that's why, one of the reasons why I sort of was drawn to that tradition is because it captures something in my experience with my brother that I've never encountered in any other tradition. This idea that if you can sit and observe, how much is actually done without you doing anything. You know, sitting on my porch, there's a robin building a nest, right? The flowers on the trees are blooming, right? The rain is falling, the grass is growing. I am doing none of this.
Yeah.
And I mentioned earlier, I have a 6-month-old son. Another great example, right? Like despite our best efforts, my wife and I, we are not making him grow. Like he's doing it all on his own. There's only so much we can do, and the rest of it is out of our hands. I don't think we spend enough time thinking about all the things in the world that happen without us doing anything about it.
Yeah. I think even pastorally, another theologian along the lines of Amos Young would be Chris Green, who is a hero in my life. And one of the things Chris Green talks about is the way we bend our expectations of God so that God performs the way we think God ought to. And he mentions things like we trust God as a provider, but we think we know what provision is. We trust God as healer, but we think we know what healing is. And he goes down the whole list. And so we build up these expectations of God only to move from frustration to frustration, not because God is unfaithful, but because our expectations of God are. I feel like what you're handling so well, Nathan, the way you describe this is how we as a people do not know what to do with ourselves when we are out of control. We don't feel comfortable just sitting and letting the grass grow and spring come, because for us that feels like we're out of control, and we hate that. It's such a timely message what you're saying right now. Can you connect this to the pandemic?
Transitioning there, I was thinking we have to be comfortable with pain and suffering, which not necessarily comfortable with it, I suppose, but we have a hard time accepting
Yes.
that sort of comes with the territory, namely being a living creature. Like, that's part of it. You don't get to opt out of that, like that comes with it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you should become complacent and not do anything about suffering if you can, but there's just a lot that you can't do sometimes. And I think knowing what you can do and what you can't do, that's why I like to qualify the definition of not wu wei, non-action, as like sometimes saying, well, non-coercive action, because there is an action component to it.
Right.
You are doing something, but you're doing it in a way that is in harmony, I suppose, with the natural order of things. I think that the pandemic confronts us with lots of things that we are uncomfortable with: a death, suffering, sickness. And these are things that, people with disabilities and people who care for them think about all the time. And it's a reality that we live sometimes on a daily basis. And when you are familiar with those things, namely our mortality, there is a certain, not resignation, I guess, but
I know what you mean.
Peace, almost comfort, sort of, in knowing that you can't do anything about it. Because I don't know, it's so hard to describe. Because on the one hand, it's extremely infuriating, but on the other hand, like, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words.
Well, one of the things you mentioned to me when we were talking earlier is how there is an element of nonviolence to this. And I would compare it to nonviolence, where it's not that we are not going to act, but the action that we take must be non-coercive action. What we're really having a hard time accepting is our vulnerability.
It's always been there. Like, it's not like this is a new state for us. And not only that, but that we are deeply intertwined and interconnected with not only the people around us, but the whole world, the whole non-human world. Yeah. And the things that we do have ramifications that sort of grow out and in ways that we can't comprehend. We are presented now in this moment with something that has always been true.
Yeah.
But we like to conveniently ignore.
Yes, we like to think that we are these rugged, independent individuals. Pull yourself up from your own bootstraps, and then a virus comes along and says, "Yeah, that's total bull."
Yep.
For those people watching,
yeah,
who need something to do, here's the challenge, and this has been the original challenge of the pandemic from the first place: do nothing, right? Yeah. Like it bothers folks that the answer is stay home.
Right. Yeah, it does. And I just to briefly qualify, I don't know that watching Netflix counts as doing nothing, and I don't know that scrolling on your phone counts as doing nothing either.
Come on, man. Yeah. Right.
Just to qualify, a little bit. For example, when I feed my son, I'm holding him, right? I'm holding him, got the bottle. I got the little pillow, he's on, cradle there. What am I doing when I'm feeding him? I'm not doing anything. But am I really there? Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I am like somewhere else entirely. But other times I can feel the weight of his head in my hand, and I'm watching him breathe. And that's all I'm doing. And that's enough, that I don't need to do anything else. I don't need, I could put headphones in and try to listen to a podcast and learn about something, but why?
Yeah.
What that's not going to do anything. That's not going to help me. What's going to help is for me to pay attention to my son while I'm feeding him. that's going to help me and it's going to help him.
Yes.
And I'm not missing out on anything else by doing that. Like, that is the thing.
Yeah.
It's hard, but if you want to hear the Spirit move, you know, and the Spirit call and the Spirit, whatever it's going to do, you know, you're not doing it. If the Spirit's going to do it, the Spirit's going to do it.
Yes.
How are you going to posture yourself so that you can receive it?
I love it. I love it. And I'm even thinking about the teaching of Jesus where he said the Spirit blows where it's like the wind. It's going to blow where it wills. So let us be still people, people who can be present, can be still. It's the hardest thing for sure.
I read a great book before our son was born, and I would highly recommend it. It's called The Gardener and the Carpenter. She talks about the difference in parenting styles, the carpenter approach and the gardener approach. The carpenter approach is, I'm going to make a blueprint, right? I have a plan, and I'm going to create this thing, right? And it's going to turn out like this. It's never going to work with a human, ever. Or the gardener approach, which is, things happen and I don't know how they happen. It's sort of magical when you think about it, but I can sort of create the environment for these things to flourish. We're cultivating the ground for things to flourish, but that's all we can do. You can't do everything else. You in fact, you have no control over it, because you can sometimes cultivate the soil and the crops fail, or it rains a little too hard, or it doesn't rain enough. You have no control over that, and that's okay. And you're going to fail a lot, but cultivate, nurture the soil, tend to the soil, so that through no action of your own, things can flourish and grow.
Beautiful. Nathan, thank you so much, man.
It was awesome. It's fun to talk and to think about these things, for sure.
Real quickly, Nathan, music has always been a part of your life, and maybe tell us a little bit about your musical background and what you do as a musician, and how has it added joy to your life?
So I started in school like most people in this area. You know, you pick if you're going to do band or choir. I picked band. I started playing the oboe, and I ended up majoring in oboe in undergrad, and then went back and got my master's in music theory and composition. Somewhere along the line, I decided, hey, I want to learn how to play guitar and piano, and it's fun. I enjoy it. But it's also incredibly frustrating too, because it's it's hard when there's something creative like that you both love it and you hate it. You know, honestly, I don't care if people hear anything I make, and that's not why I do it, and that's never been why I do it. It's enjoyable and it's frustrating, and I love the creative process. I love crafting things and honing things and, refining it. And I actually really like editing too, going to studio and recording and which take is better. I love that whole process. I just think it's really energizing. It's one of the few things that I do where I looked and like, oh my God, I can't believe I've been doing this for like several hours and I had no idea. And I skipped all these meals, I lived in West Virginia for a year. That's where I learned banjo. And there would be these jam sessions and you just show up, and it didn't matter if you were good. It didn't matter if you were great. You just showed up and you just played, and everybody had a great time. And that part of it, I really like. I like that part of it too. So
good, man. It's so good. Your ideas are great, and I'm so happy and thankful. And thank you from Diane and I. And we have a small community, but I know they're gonna love this, man.
I hope so, yeah. And like I said, I'm happy to share my paper. Anybody who wants to read it,
I think we should put a link there, in the description so that people can click on it and check out your dissertation because it's so good. Thank you, Nate.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good night.
All right, man. You too.
Nathan, thank you so much for being with us today, for being our guest on CASA. Thank you to all of you who have watched this episode. Thank you for sticking it to the end. You made it. Yay. So thank you so much. Thank you for all of you who support this. Thank you to the Sacred Commons. And we are just so thankful for all of you. So we hope that you have a good rest of your week, and we can't wait to see you again next week on CASA.
We drive ourselves from one exhaustion to another. We pace our societies by the pace of our computers. We conduct the major relationships of our lives, both professional and personal, according to the speed of our communications. We measure ourselves by the amount of our productivity. And every day, we become more exhausted, less rested in body, spirit, and mind. And so less capable of creating things, let alone of developing relationships as a result. That is not irony, that's tragedy.
Maybe what we all need most is time to do nothing, out on a porch in a summer breeze, down by the creek when the trout are running, back in the garden when it's time to put the beets and beans in again.
Turn off the television and breathe. Quit texting and go ride your bike. Close the computer. Don't answer any email. Don't try to get ahead. Don't take any callbacks.
And during the family dinner, turn off the phone. And when the television is on, watch it instead of talking through it. Reclaim your life, your thoughts, your personality, your friends, your family. It's time to sleep in like you did in the good old days. Know the world will not end. Have a late breakfast.
In the words of Ashley Brilliant, sometimes the most urgent and vital thing you can possibly do is take a complete rest.
Be still.
Be still.